Chris Coleman was born in 1977, into a religious family. He had always been involved with the church in one way or the other. His parents, Connie and Ron, are co-pastors of the Grace Church in Chester, Illinois. In his 20s, Chris joined the Marines, and was part of the K-9 team as a dog handler. And it was at a K-9 training seminar, where he met the love of his life, Sherry Weiss, who was an MP in the U.S. Air Force. Chris and Sherry drove up to Chicago one weekend in 1997, and got married. There was a child already on the way, according to Chris's father Ron. That was Garrett, and his little brother Gavin was not far behind. After leaving the service, Chris landed an important job that paid more than $100,000 a year as a bodyguard for world-famous Christian televangelist, Joyce Meyer. He traveled the world as her bodyguard. Joyce is an old friend of the Colemans, and had known Chris since he was a little boy. In 2009, Chris was living a life envied by most. He had a high-paying job, a beautiful wife, and 2 wonderful children, living in an idyllic lakeside house in the suburbs of Columbia, Illinois. The Colemans had it all. But as fate would have it, things would not be the same. In November of 2008, Chris revealed to some of his friends and relatives that he started receiving hateful messages and emails from an anonymous person who claimed to despise the preaching of his employer, Joyce Meyer. The emails were from the ID, destroychris@gmail.com. The emails stated that if Joyce Meyer doesn't stop preaching, Chris and his family will die. Chris filed a police report and claimed that he was being stalked. The last threatening message that Chris got was on April 27, 2009. One of Chris's neighbors was Justin Barlow, who was a detective sergeant for the Columbia Police. When Chris informed Justin about the threats he was getting, Justin positioned his front security camera to focus on the Coleman's front yard for added security. Columbia Police even increased their patrolling near the Coleman's house, but never found anything suspicious. On May 5, 2009, at around 6:40 a.m., Chris was at the gym for his workout. When he couldn't get through to his wife, he called his neighbor, Justin Barlow the detective, and asked him to check up on his family. Justin then walked over to the Coleman's house around 7 a.m. for a welfare check, and rang the doorbell. When no one answered, he entered the house to find a harrowing scene. All 3 family members were found dead. 31-year-old Sherry, 11-year-old Garrett, and 9-year-old Gavin were strangled in their beds, and their bodies lay there. There were also red spray-painted messages all over the house on the walls that read, "Punished," and "You knew this was coming," among other messages. Sherry Coleman looked like she had fought her killer, as they found 3 ligature marks on her, and she also had a black eye. There were also red spray-painted messages on the sheets of one of the boys. The brutal strangulation murders of Sherry Coleman and her 2 little boys turned the house on the lake into a major crime scene. Columbia cops called for assistance from nearby police departments. Investigators wondered whether a possible fanatic, believed to have sent death threats to Chris Coleman, is the cold-blooded killer. Miraculously, the main target, Chris, had escaped the carnage. Police immediately launched an investigation, and started to examine the Coleman's house thoroughly, trying to find any evidence that might lead them to the killer. Police also reviewed the camera footage from Justin Barlow's house to see if they can find anything. They noticed that Chris had left his house at 5:43 a.m. on that morning, exactly an hour before Chris called Justin to check on his family. But the autopsy revealed that the murders would have taken place hours before Chris left the house, and they concluded that he must have been present when the murders took place. When questioned, Chris claimed that his wife and kids were still alive when he left the house for the gym. But the autopsy report told a different story. The other thing police said that they were very suspicious about is when they told Chris that his wife and 2 children were murdered, he never really asked how or what happened. It was also unusual that the killer who had been sending threats to Chris only struck when Chris was not at home. Chris had arrived at the house just moments before the police did. When he was told that his family had just been murdered, he went back out to the yard and sat down with his face in his palms. Police assumed that he was in a state of shock, so they sent him in an ambulance to a nearby hospital. While in the ambulance, one of the responders noticed scratches on Chris's arms. When questioned, he just said that it was because he had just punched the gurney in a fit of rage, which caused the superficial wounds. Police also started to investigate the hateful emails that Chris received from the killer. And they were able to very quickly trace the IP address of the sender. They found that the emails came from Chris's own laptop. A friend had later told the police that Chris had been very vocal about his displeasure with his employer, Joyce Meyer. Apparently, he did not like the fact that Meyer was living such a lavish life by taking money from minimum wage workers. The emails sent to Chris seemed to make more sense now. Police also confirmed that no one else from the Joyce Meyer Ministries had received any threats, other than Chris. After going through the many messages on Sherry's phone, they also discovered that she had been texting a friend recently about Chris wanting a divorce. Sherry told her friend that Chris said that she and the kids were in the way of his job. Sherry had apparently argued with Chris and refused to sign the divorce papers, saying that he'd have to kill her before she divorced him. Sherry told her friend that if anything were to happen to her, Chris would be responsible. While searching Chris's computer, police also found a digital clue in the form of provocative videos. Although initially he denied it, it was revealed that he'd been having an affair with a friend of Sherry, called Tara Lintz. Tara happened to be Sherry's best friend from high school. Tara and Chris had been exchanging nude photos and videos of themselves. Police also found a lot of information about Tara on Chris's laptop. Information about Tara's body measurements, her likes and dislikes, her address and phone number, and much more. It seemed like Chris was stalking her. Chris was also planning to marry Tara, and also decided on a wedding date. After questioning Tara Lintz, police concluded that although she was having an affair with Chris, she genuinely did not have a clue about the murders. Tara told cops that they had started their relationship in November 2008, the same month the emails started coming, and that Chris had told her he would present divorce papers to Sherry the same day she ended up getting murdered. The police also found out that he was texting Tara at his family's funeral, saying how much he missed her. Chris was starting to look more like a suspect when forensic investigators revealed that Chris's DNA was found under Sherry's fingernails. Friends, family, and well-wishers started placing memorial objects like flowers, candles and balloons in front of the Coleman's house. A few days after the funeral, while the police were still investigating the murders, a neighbor who lived on the same street as the Colemans noticed Chris removing all the stuff and disposing of them in the garbage bin. Police finally arrested Chris and charged him with 3 counts of first-degree murder on May 19, 2009. At the trial, several witnesses testified to the state of the bodies when found, saying they had been clearly dead for several hours. Pathologist Dr. Raj Nanduri, who performed the autopsy, said it was likely the victims were strangled between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. before Chris left for the gym. Chris pled not guilty at the trial, but the prosecutors said that he murdered his family so that he could be with his mistress, Tara. Prosecutors alleged Chris Coleman killed his family because he feared he would lose his job as televangelist Joyce Meyer's bodyguard if he got a divorce. And when the pre-taped testimony from Meyer was played at the court, she said that Chris's job would have been in jeopardy not because of the divorce, but because of the immorality of his affair. The state said Chris emailed the threats from his own computer, and he claimed some mystery man hacked it. But Meyer discounted that too, saying she never saw anyone else use his computer. So when the jury went to deliberate on Coleman's guilt, they could not reach a unanimous decision. Then, prosecution showed sexually explicit images taken by Chris and Tara of each other to the jurors. The images all had the timestamp blacked out. But when one of the jurors happened to flip over one of the photographs, the date on the photo was October 2008. This proved that both Chris and Tara had been lying about when exactly they began having an affair. And that was the one small detail that ruined Chris's credibility. After some deliberation, the jury came back with a verdict, and said Chris Coleman was guilty. The judge sentenced Chris to 3 life terms without parole. There was a huge gathering of protesting crowds who were cheering on as Chris Coleman was being taken away in handcuffs. Even in prison, Chris continued to proclaim his innocence. After having his appeals rejected, in April of 2018, Chris Coleman filed a petition for post-conviction relief, which addresses violations of a defendant's constitutional rights. He cited ineffective counsel, denial of due process and actual innocence, and said that the jury shouldn't have had access to those pictures, the nude ones with the timestamp, since they weren't in the allowed evidence. In March 2019, a judge granted Coleman the chance for a new evidentiary hearing, but there hasn't been any decisions made on whether he'll get a new trial or not. Police revealed that they knew that the family had been murdered before Chris left the house. They knew about the X-rated videos that were exchanged between Chris and Tara. They knew that the threatening emails came from Chris's own laptop. And they also knew about his affair with Tara, all on the day that the murders had occurred. The only reason it took them almost 10 days to finally charge and arrest Chris was because they wanted enough evidence to show in court with which to make a strong case. Despite the mountain of evidence against him, Chris continues to protest his innocence, and his family believe him, unfortunately. What happened to Sherry and her 2 young boys is beyond horrific, but it is good to know that the justice system works, and that Chris Coleman will be behind bars for a long time to come. What are your thoughts on this case? Do you think Chris Coleman deserves a new trial? Let us know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and we hope you found our video interesting. Like, comment and subscribe for more fascinating unsolved mysteries.